Hello and welcome. We're happy to be here and we hope that you will join us. I want to mention one or two things before I introduce our guest. One is I thank everybody for their kind words. I appreciate those words. They mean a lot to me and they encourage me. Thank you. And also, it's such a beautiful weather today. It is just gorgeous out there. Perfect, a fall day. And last night was a full moon, so it was cold. But today is just beautiful. And, sometimes we have intentions and ideas, but we don't do them. But when we act on them, they become real, and we accomplish what we want. And I would like to introduce Stavro Nashi. He had an idea to write a book. It's a good book, and it's about his life. He and his beautiful wife, Anna, live in Maine, and they have 2 sons, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. Stavro, you came and joined us in Maine. We're happy to have you.
I'm glad to be here.
And thank you for coming today.
And thank you for allowing me this opportunity to talk about the book.
Yeah. Now, all right, let's start with, okay, I'm going to say something about the book before I ask you.
Okay.
I was surprised that you were a Marine. That shocked me as long as I've known you.
Yeah.
How long have you been here?
We've been here for about 15 years now.
I just found that out. See how quiet he is? But he's disciplined like a Marine. He's careful when he speaks.
Well, that was a long time ago. And yes, it's part of my life. But
according to the book, it's a big part of your life. You were in there how many years?
22 years. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. And you never said a word. And you sit right next to me in council. I was surprised when I read that.
Yeah, I enjoyed every minute of it. And, it's, some people like their time in the service and look back on it fondly. And some people don't. But I'm one of those guys that actually enjoyed himself, during my 22-year career.
Well, welcome to Maine, even if it is how many years later.
It was my dream to come to Maine, and Maine was the first place that, we came to when my parents immigrated to the United States. And my mother had a sister, and her mother had joined her sister here. So we had lots of relatives in Maine. And but unfortunately, back then it was 1956. Maine, it was tough finding a job, And my dad, when he did find a job, it was down in New York City. So we moved to New York City. But we would come back, every so often for the holidays or sometimes during the summer. And Maine was, it was just, as far as I was concerned, the best place in the whole world.
What was it you liked so much?
Well, I grew up in Manhattan, and playing on the streets, dodging traffic. And, Maine was this green place with trees, and you could go horseback riding, you go to the beach, and...
we have it all.
Yeah, you do have it all here, and it's a well-kept secret, we do have a lot of visitors here, but the nice thing about it is it does get cold and all the visitors leave.
Mm-hmm. That's true. It's beautiful. You can't get bored in Maine. Look at, a month ago we were roasting, and today it's beautiful.
Right.
And then the growing season's short. But we do have fresh fruits and vegetables that we grow right here.
I think it's very true what the saying that people have, that if you don't like the weather in Maine, just be patient, it'll change.
Okay, there's a million questions I want to ask you. I would you tell the folks about how you came to America?
Sure. I was born in Istanbul, Turkey, and there was at one time there was a large community of Greeks who lived in Istanbul, and they were a thriving community. They had their own churches. They were very business oriented, and despite a lot of the restrictions that were placed on them by the Turkish government, they did very, very well as a community. And what you have to understand is that the Greeks had lived in that city for thousands of years. And in 1955, when the troubles began in Cyprus between the Greeks and the Turks, the Turkish government decided to systematically destroy the Greek community, and they engineered a pogrom, which is, for those who don't know what that word means, it is an attack for religious reasons on civilians. And so they engineered a riot and attacked not only our churches, but our businesses and homes as well. And after that, the community was never able to recover. Many people, left, and the community, which was about 150,000 Greeks at that time, is now down to about 2,000, mostly elderly people that are still hanging on. Our home was attacked that night, and we were very, very lucky, and to my grandmother's quick thinking, my dad was at work at the time. She locked the door, and we had a very, very strong door, bars on the windows. They were not able to get in. They broke all the windows. They tried to knock the door down.
Now, how old were you this?
I was almost 5.
Do you remember that?
I do. It was a pretty traumatic experience, especially for my mother and my grandmother. And I remember we went up to the second floor, and I remember the banging and the yelling, and my grandmother, who was this tough old lady, she decided that what my mother and her needed to do was to sew a flag. And so they grabbed this red blanket and then a white sheet, and I don't know if anyone knows what the Turkish flag looks like, but it's a red background with a white star and crescent on it. And so that's what they sewed the white. They cut out a white star and crescent. They sewed it onto that blanket, and they hung it from the window. And people left. They went away.
Now, that's the flag turkey?
Yes, it is. And I never could understand why that happened. As I was growing up, why did they leave? Because they were pretty close to breaking that door down. And many years later, there was an incident that took place, and all the prime ministers of the European countries were going to pose for a picture, including the prime minister of Greece and Turkey. And there was a little flag of each of their countries on the floor. And the prime minister of Greece, along with all the other prime ministers, just stood on top of that flag, on top of his own flag. the Turkish prime minister picked the flag up and kissed it. And, you know, when I went to Turkey again a few years ago, I realized that they hold that flag and their country in great respect. And that was, you know, because that Turkish flag was hanging from our house, that saved our lives.
And what did your mother do with you that night?
Well, she put me under the bed, and my grandmother told her to take herself and me and go hide someplace in the house. And my mother refused because she didn't want to leave my grandmother, you know, on her own. So they hid me under the bed. And I actually remember that, you know.
Were you
and,
scared?
I was. I mean, I really didn't know what was going on, you know. But as a kid, you know, you can sense that when adults are scared, you know, you pick up on that.
I can't imagine that.
Yeah, but we were lucky. We got to come to the United States, and you know, we
Now,
came to a country where you don't have to. When you put the flag out, it's because you're proud of it, and you don't have to worry about, you know, people coming to your home in the middle of the night, you know, to attack it.
Did you come from Turkey right to America?
We went to Greece for you know, a short period, but you know, back then Greece was just emerging from a civil war, and so really there was no opportunity there for a lot of the refugees that were coming from Turkey. So many of them ended up in you know, throughout the world. Greeks are it's a small country, but Greeks are you know, immigrants in many different places in the world. Australia, Germany, the United Kingdom, Canada, you know, there's big Greek communities everywhere, including the United States, of course.
That's quite an experience. It really is.
Yeah, it does, and it colors your, you know, your kind of, your perspective on things.
Now,
And,
when your mom and dad came here, they couldn't speak English, could they?
no,
No.
they could not speak English. They didn't know a word of English. As a matter of fact, you know, I was, you know, when you're 5 years old, you pick up the language pretty quickly. And I ended up, you know, being able to speak English fluently within a matter of, you know, 5 or 6 months. So I became kind of, in some cases, the translator for the family, you know.
Well, your mom and dad did well, especially your mom. I didn't talk much to your dad because he was quiet.
Yeah.
Very handsome man. Your mother was cute, full of it, very social
Yeah.
and caring.
My dad was he was born in Albania, and my mother was born in Albania as well. They were born right near the Greek-Albanian border, and many of the villages that ended up on the Albanian side of the border are actually Greek-speaking, you know, inhabitants. So my mother was born in Policani, and my father was born in Sheperi, and which is right down the road. And I used to ask my dad, you know, well, how far is, you know, Sheperi from Policani? And he would say, well, it's about 20 minutes with a fast donkey, you know.
That's cute.
So, but my dad went to, before the war, he went to, he was chosen to study at the seminary on the island of Halki, which is, you know, in the Bosporus there, right near Istanbul. And he graduated. really did not want to, enter the priesthood. It was his hope to be able to teach, and but because he was an Albanian citizen, he was not able to do that because of the restrictions again that were placed on the Greek community there. So he ended up as a secretary of the Holy Trinity Cathedral in Istanbul. And because he was considered a stateless person, he couldn't go back to Albania because it was,
What a feeling.
yeah, it was behind the Iron Curtain. My parents were able to get a visa, immigrant visa to the United States. My mother, on the other hand, she grew up, she left, her Policani when she was very young. And she grew up in Turkey, in Istanbul, in a little town along the Bosporus there. It's just outside of Istanbul, and it's called Nihori is the Greek name. Yenikoi is the Turkish name of the town. And my grandfather was he was a grocer, and he was quite a good businessman.
Now, when your grandfather, did he stay in Turkey?
My maternal grandfather.
Yeah, that was not Turkey, Albania.
Yeah, my father's father and mother were in Albania, and they lived under the communist regime there, which was one of the worst communist, regimes, of. They were very, very. They had no friends. They didn't even have, they didn't like the Russians. Then they had a falling out with the Chinese. There weren't many countries that they had much of a relationship with. It was a very closed, very much like North Korea, very closed regime until it finally fell in the late 1980s. Yeah. But yes, my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, interestingly enough, he came to Biddeford, Maine in 1907, and he worked here for 3 years in the mills. And he went, like many of his generation, there were many Greek immigrants that would come here, and the vast majority were men, who would come here and work for a few years to amass a small fortune and go back to their village. Many of them, one of the reasons that they would come here is that they could not get married until they married. All the sisters were married off first.
I know that custom.
And
the oldest one,
and
too.
in order to marry them off, they had to be able to provide a dowry. So they would come here to work for the dowry, so they could marry the sister, so they could get married. And but yeah, he was here for 3 years, and it was interesting because he lived on Alfred Road. As I saw, I did some, research. He lived on Alfred Road, and I work right off of Alfred Road, and I pass the place where he lived every day.
Imagine.
Yes, that's 100 years ago, when he was here. Went back to Albania. He was not able to tuck my grandmother into coming to America.
Oh.
And it's little things like that. If my grandmother had given in and come to America, I would not exist. It's funny how one little decision by a person, in your family just changes everything.
Well, who would have thought you'd be sitting here talking to me and I'd be talking to you in America, in Saco?
Sure. And,
So
our families come from, very similar backgrounds. And, you know, the community here in Saco, the Greek community, is very tight-knit, and it goes back to the turn of the century when all these Greek immigrants came here to look for a better life.
They needed each other.
They did.
They needed each
They
other.
were very close-knit because, you know, no matter where you were from, if you were Greek, you know, there was that connection that they had between each other. And yes, they had, you know, other friends, but, you know, in our immigrant experience, especially that first generation, your parents are still very, very tied to the old country. And so it's almost like you're being raised
In Greece.
in Greece.
I know all about it.
According to Greek rules. I know you do. That's especially true. It's tough on the girls.
It is.
Because whereas, you know, in the Greek culture, the boys have a little more freedom, you know, and they kind of...
A little more freedom. They worshiped their boys, and the girls were nothing.
And the girls were, of course, they had to, they were raised very, very strictly. And, you know, the family honor was to be maintained.
Now, Anna, she's a lovely woman,
Thank you.
and she's from Greece. And does she like America?
Oh, yeah, she loves America. I mean, this has been her home for the last 26 years. I was lucky enough during my Marine Corps career to be stationed in Greece for 2 years. Never asked for it. I just kind of lucked into it. And that's where I met my wife. And
I like that part of the book, especially romance. Oh,
well,
that
you
was
know,
great.
it's like I talk about things in the book. You know, when you first meet another person, you know, of the opposite sex, there's that attraction, you know, that chemical attraction, which is all well and good, you know, but that doesn't last forever. And
I don't think it's supposed to. It gets stronger and something else.
it does. You're absolutely right. I mean, but it doesn't last forever. And where you really kind of grow together is going through life's ups and downs. And that's where I think, you know, people learn to love each other in a very, very special kind of way, you know. And the unfortunate thing is nowadays is a lot of the young couples, they don't wait. They're not patient. And I think they have a kind of a different approach to relationships. And, you know, and as a result, you know, you have so many young couples breaking up before they've even kind of given it a chance, you know, which is sad. And it's not good for the kids, you know.
You know, you talk about Greek ways. Look at these women and men that their wives and husbands were picked out for them. How could they couldn't be loved and all that lust before they got married? Mm-hmm. And it lasted.
Yeah, it did. And I'm not saying that there's not, you know, there's not good reason sometimes to,
Both
you
ways.
know, for couples to split up. And as a matter of fact, in my book, my chapter, my grandparents on my mother's side, they ended up, you know, splitting up. You know, by that time, my mother and her brother and sister were in their late teenage years, early 20s. But it had a profound effect on them. And, you know, and back in those days, it was very uncommon. And it was something that our family dealt with, for a long time. The after effects of that. So it does happen in every family, and it doesn't always work out.
I think Greek people too are emotional. We take things very deep and seriously. And when something like that happens, it's hard for us to understand.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember
Your
one
mother and your
time
father.
we're very loud, and
You're not very loud.
I can be, believe me.
I know. I've yet to see
And I
it.
remember bringing a couple of my buddies home, when I was in the Marines, and I said, "Let's go to New York, and I'll show you around." And so my mother, she put on this big spread. We had a bunch of relatives and friends, and of course they were all Greek.
That was your
And
mother,
then,
though. She loved doing that.
yes, she did. She loved to entertain. And, people were yelling and, their voices were raised. And one of my buddies says, "What's going on?" I go, "Oh, don't worry." I said, we're not fighting. This is just the way, our normal tone of voice. And he thought that we were going to come to blows here, and so, yeah.
Yeah, we are loud. Now, all right. Tell us now how you decided to write your book.
Well, I really didn't start off with the idea of writing a book. Have you ever heard of, do you know what a blog is?
Yeah.
A blog is just a personal website, and there are many, many of them on the internet these days. And people, can write about just about anything that they want to, or if they have a particular interest and whatnot. And I've always been kind of fascinated, with the fact that anything that has to do with Greece or Greeks. And I would go to blogs that had some similar interests. And I got the idea that I wanted to create my own blog about Greece and Greeks. And I started writing on the internet, on my blog, about it. And that was almost 7 years ago. So I had this massive amount of stuff that I had written. And
That's sort of like research.
it is, I've written just a lot of things about about history, religion, food, you name it. If it had anything to do with Greece or Greeks, I would write about it. And I got a call from a gentleman by the name of Steve Crow, and he was the editor of the Greek American newspaper that used to be printed in Boston, which is now, they went out of business about a year or so ago. But Steve Crow called me and says, we like the stuff that you write. Would you be willing to write a column in the paper? And I did that for 3 years. And he's the one that really kind of helped me figure out that, yes, I needed to write a book, and I needed to take some of the stuff that I had written, make a book out of it. And
you lived it, and you really feel it, and it can't help but be good.
well, it's a labor of love, it is about my life, but the focus of the book is not on me. It's really, the focus is on the people that have been in my life. And, the theme of the book is life as a journey. And one of my favorite poets is a Greek who lived in Egypt, which had a large Greek community, by the way, and around the turn of the century. His name was Constantine Cavafy. And one of the poems that he wrote was a poem called Ithaca. So Ithaca was the island that Odysseus, who was one of the Greek generals that fought in the Trojan War. And, you know, if you can think back to high school or college days, the Iliad and then the Odyssey. The Odyssey was about Odysseus trying to get back after the Trojan War to his home, Ithaca. So Cavafy wrote this poem about the journey that we are all on, and we're all looking for Ithaca. And if you don't mind, I'll read a little piece of that poem.
Go ahead.
And keep Ithaca always in your mind. Arriving there is what you're destined for. But do not hurry the journey at all. Better if it lasts for years, so you are old by the time that you reach the island, wealthy with all that you have gained on the way. That's just a piece of the poem.
I've read it.
Yeah. And when I read it, it really, you know, struck a chord, and I said, this is what the theme of the book is going to be. And I came up with the title Ithaca on the Horizon. And in the book, I do travel back looking for that mythical Ithaca. And for me, that Ithaca was the place that I had left. And that was my birthplace. But it was also some places along the way. And you know, each of us in his life journey is changed by the people that we meet, and that's what I really wanted the focus of the book to be about.
Well, that's good. Well, I guess in everybody's life there's someone who helps you. Like that Steve Crow, if he...
Sure, absolutely. There are people that change our lives, you know, and I mean, I think all of us have people who have really made a deep impression on us and who have changed our life for the better, whether they're family members or friends or people that we have worked for. Yeah, you know, and sometimes those people are, you know, we meet them by chance and we know them for only a brief period of time, but they, you know, they may change our lives in a major way.
I believe that. Yeah. Well, I asked you before, do you think you'd like to write another book?
I would, and I would, you know, there's a number of things that interest me that I'd like to write about. Right now, my focus is on, you know, this particular book, and what I found is that writing the book is actually the easy part. The hard part is, you know, getting people to read the book. And that's, you know, for a writer, that is what you really want, is for people to read the book so that you can make a connection with that reader. So marketing is an important part of, you know,
Why don't you let me hold
writing
the
a
book
book.
up? That's a beautiful cover.
Yeah, it's funny because that cover is a photo from a photo that was taken by my older son when he was visiting the island of Santorini in Greece, and I just thought that was, you know, the appropriate cover
Beautiful.
for this particular title. Could I read another
Love to.
part, some
Sure.
parts from the book? Maybe
Yes.
we can talk about them. Okay.
You have two sons, and one is studying to be a monk, a priest.
Yeah, one of them is a monk, and he lives in Greece. He originally wanted to become a Greek Orthodox priest. He was a seminarian and down in Boston, and in his fourth year he went to Greece and spent some time in a monastery and decided that he wanted to become a monk. And obviously that was something we never expected. And I talk about it in the book.
He got that from his grandfather.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was always, he became an altar boy when he was like 6 years old. And I think that, exposure and going to church, it really appealed to him. And it's becoming a monk it's something I would not consider from my own life, but everyone's got their own journey to
That's
follow.
right.
And with our kids, we have all these hopes for them that we want them, things we want them to accomplish or things we want them to do, but it's their life and they have to live it, their way. And that's been a difficult thing for a parent to learn.
It is, but once you learn it,
Yeah.
you have to let go.
Right. My other son, Chris, he is a junior at the University of Maine in Orono.
Is he a junior already?
Yes, he is. He's a biology major, and he's also following his own, path in life. And as parents, of course, we wish them all the best in whatever they choose. And
I'm going to tell you, there's nothing like freedom to do what you want.
there is. You're absolutely right about that. There's nothing like it.
I love freedom because I never had it. I love it. I think it's me anyway,
I think eventually we all get it, one way or the other.
if we live long enough.
That's right. But we love our kids, and no matter how far away they are from us, we build that little house in our heart, and they live in that house forever.
Yep. I don't think they know, and they won't know until they're our age,
Yeah.
and then they'll know.
Yeah, because they'll have, hopefully, if they have children, they'll experience the same thing.
Yeah. I think it's the hardest thing in the world to let go. Oh, I did it though. And once you do it, it's okay. You get to like it. But you never really let go.
Mm-hmm. I used to mourn the fact that my son was going to be a monk and not have children. But someone told me, who's a monk, told me, that's not exactly, because although monks do not have families, they live a celibate life. They have spiritual children. And
What a nice thought, Stavro.
yes, and they, those spiritual children, hold them in high regard, and they change lives. So.
I never thought of that. That's something to think about.
It is. Do we have some time for me to,
Yes,
to read
yeah, go ahead.
a piece of
We got about
the book?
5 or 10 more minutes.
Okay. Let's see. My father worked the late shift when I was growing up. One of the lasting memories of my youth was hearing him come home around 1 o'clock in the morning, recognizing as the Rebetiko song, that's the Greek blues, says, the sound of his tired and sagging steps. I would wake up, peer at him through the crack in the door from the room where I slept, careful not to reveal that I was awake. He would take off his jacket, wash his hands and face, and sit in the kitchen table and read his copy of the Greek newspaper that was always folded in his pocket. He would eat an apple, peeling it carefully and then cutting it into bite-sized wedges. When he was finished, he would stand there in the kitchen in front of the icons and pray with his hands outstretched. Then he would turn the kitchen light off and walk over to where I slept, opening the door a bit to peek in on me while I feigned being fast asleep. Sometimes he would come in to tuck me in or to pull the covers over my shoulders. When I was a little boy, my father held a special fascination for me, especially his strong, large hands and muscular arms that seemed able to hold the weight of the world. As far as I was concerned, he was as indestructible as the superheroes in my comic books. Baba was laid low only once that I recall. He had a terrible cough and fever, and as he was lying in bed, visibly uncomfortable, Mama and Yaya huddled over him, trying to figure out what to do. I could tell that they were worried. Yaya, who's never a woman to stand by and wring her hands helplessly, took charge, deciding that only venduzas, a traditional folk remedy from her native Ipitos, would cure what was ailing him. She gave my mother a few quick orders, and Mama, of course, immediately set to work getting the requisite items that Yaya requested. As I watched in abject horror, Yaya proceeded to dip a small ball of cotton in alcohol, light it on fire, and place it on my father's back, quickly covering it with a small glass. The cotton ball was immediately extinguished, sucking up all the remaining air under the glass, which turned into a vacuum adhering tightly. This was supposed to draw out all the bad vapors from Baba's lungs. As she placed one after another on his back, all I could see was the flaming cotton ball as it was placed on bare skin. And she repeated the process again and again until there was about 5 or 6 glasses stuck to his back. It was painless, but to my young eyes, it looked like excruciating torture. My father endured it stoically. I bawled through the whole thing to my father and mother and Yaya's amusement, while Mama did her best to comfort and reassure me. The next day, Baba dragged himself out of his sickbed, went to work, albeit with curious circular bruises under his shirt. After that ordeal, Yaya assumed an even more exalted position than the one she already had in my boyhood imagination. Now she was the purveyor of strange medical cures that were beyond the skill of mere mortal physicians. Baba, who seemed no worse for all the wear and tear, took on the mythic proportions of the Greek heroes depicted in my Greek school textbook. Although I questioned his judgment at times in subsequent years, he would always remain a heroic figure in my eyes.
That's a beautiful story. That book is full of caring and love and truth.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it will ring a bell with people because it's about family, and we all have family, and we all have stories like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
I can relate to it. I was never a Marine, and I didn't see much war personally, but I can relate to it, most of it.
Yeah. I tried, this is not about my Marine Corps career. There's not going to be a lot of war stories in this book.
I know, but it surprised me.
Yeah.
It just surprised me.
Well, everybody's got a story, and it's funny how, we know people, and sometimes for years, but we don't know about their story. And when I sit down sometimes and I start to talk to people about their story. You
You're
know,
amazed.
if they will tell you their story. Sometimes they won't tell you their story.
No.
But when they tell you their story, it's amazing. And then you go, wow, I had no idea. I find that when you think that you've got it bad or you have a tough life, talk to some people and you may find out that the burdens that they carry are much heavier than yours.
And you know what? I believe good comes out of everything, sooner or later. I do. Even bad. I do.
I agree. I agree.
Well, I think our time is up. We didn't cover everything, but
Oh, no. I didn't expect to cover everything. And I think, people...
now where is that on sale?
Well, first of all, you can get it on Amazon.com. And all you have to do is Google Amazon and ITHAKA on the Horizon, and you'll come to the books page. There's also an author page, and which will take you to my blog, which is called My Greek Odyssey. So if you Google My Greek Odyssey, it'll take you right to the blog, which is, by the way, has a link to the Amazon page. It is also available at 2 bookstores here in Biddeford, and one is None Such Bookstore over in Biddeford Crossing Shopping Center, and the other is the Elements Cafe, which is on Main Street in Biddeford.
Elements Cafe?
Yeah, it's a
Is it
coffee.
a new one?
It's a coffee house across the street from the library. And,
Way up there.
Excuse me?
Way up near the Biddeford Library?
Yeah, the Biddeford Library on Main Street. It's right across the street. It's a wonderful establishment.
You can have coffee and read a book.
You can have coffee, read a book. You can even drink a beer.
Yeah,
there.
I noticed that when I went to MacArthur Library. I said, gee, that's new.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yes. And I'm going to try and get it into some additional bookstores here in the area. But right now I'm just working on getting the word out in various internet sites about the book, and trying to do things like this interview to make people aware.
I don't think you charged enough for the book.
Well, again,
I don't.
This book was not designed to make me rich. It was, designed to tell a story, and which I love to do, and sometimes to make that connection with the reader. And I'm hoping that it will appeal to not only Greek Americans, because they'll have a lot that they will appreciate in the book, especially some of the background history, because there's a lot of history in this book. And but it's also, like I said, will appeal to other folks as well who want to learn more about Greeks and Greek culture, but who also have families of their own and are on journeys of their own. So.
Even if someone just took a trip to Greece, to those places, I learned a lot. But the biggest thing I learned was, after knowing you, that you were a Marine for 22 years, I will never get over that. But now I can see he's very quiet most of the time, stands very straight, keeps things mostly to himself, right?
And I don't yell at people.
Oh, is there any one thing you'd like to say?
No, I just want to thank you, Zaffi, for
Hey, it's been a pleasure.
inviting me to come here. And I admit I was a little nervous in the beginning. I wasn't exactly sure what we would talk about, but you're a great interviewer, and you draw people out.
It was fun. I enjoyed the book. I read it. And I wish you luck. And it's been a pleasure to have you. And Steve, it's a pleasure to know you and your family.
Same here.
You're very nice
Zaffi.
people.
You are, I call you the Uber Yaya.
Thank you. Folks, I hope you enjoyed the program. There's much more in that book than what we talked about. It's in the stores if you're interested. Thank you for listening, and see you next week. Love, Zaffi.